Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. In this one, we're taking a look at the brand new Ira Armory deck hero, Ira Scarlet Revenger. I mean, she's technically not new, but for people that didn't get an Ira from whatever event she was from, if your stores didn't have any extra to just give out, because my store had a ton extra they just gave out, Ira Scarlet Revenger. She finally has an armory deck, which means you can get her if you're the normal populace. However, here's the thing, Ira is already pretty good. The new Edge of Autumn cards aren't the deck that really needed the new cards. Next week, we are going to be taking a look at Katsu using all of the new cards, because I think in Katsu they are absolutely insane. But for Ira, I think there's a possibility that the Kadachi's Dagger build is still better than the Edge of Autumn build. But since the Edge of Autumn build is new, I thought figures we should take a look at it. There is, of course, the question of, is this better than the build we've already had? That's a little up in the air. I think we'll need to see at some, if Ira sees a bit more play in events, but I think playing Edge of Autumn over Kadachi's does make you lose a few key cards. It makes your dual threat a little weaker. You lose something like Pain in the backside. These are like really good dagger synergy cards, but you do gain access to some really powerful new cards. The Okana Scar Wraps, your Seek Vengeance, your Legacy of Ikaru, Vengeance Never Rests. These cards are very good. Enact Vengeance, all the new cards. So with that, let's get started. Ira, Scarlet Revenger, is a 4 intellect, 40 health ninja hero. I believe she is technically the first hero printed from the Learn to Play decks. She's the same. Obviously, Ira Crimson Haze is Living Legend in Blitz. But very simple ability. Your second attack each turn gets +1 power. Really, really powerful. Just gives you +1 value every single turn. For our weapon, we are playing the Edge of Autumn. This comes with the Ira Armory deck. It is her main weapon. It is a ninja two-handed sword with the simple text of 1 resource to attack with Go Again, and it has 1 power. Not the most damage, but because ninja requires different cards to be used before other cards, this is very key, as a lot of the cards want Edge of Autumn to be the last thing used. For the rest of the equipment, we are playing the Mask of Momentum, as this is just the key Ira headpiece. The new headpiece is cool, but we're not playing it because it's pretty bad, I'm going to be honest. It does let you get your Whirling Mist Blossom, but that's not a card we're generally excited about. We'd rather be on Mask of Momentum, forcing our opponent to block certain cards to prevent us from drawing. We are playing the Fyendal Spring Tunic, as Ira decks tend to go a little later. We are playing the new Okana Scar Wraps. These are a 2-block Blade Break Ninja Arm. They have 2 effects. You can tap them and banish an Edge of Autumn you control as an attack reaction to give any ninja attack action +1 power. And when an attack with Vengeance in the name hits, you can equip an Edge of Autumn from your banish zone. This is the main way we're going to be still abusing cards such as Dual Threat, but also being able to push through our hit effects. As if someone blocks 6 on an Enact Vengeance, we can use the Scar Wraps to make it 7. Notably, it can be used on any ninja attack action, not just the ones with Vengeance in the name, although the Vengeance ones are how you get the dagger, or the Edge of Autumn back. So do be careful with that, but you can use it on anything, making it an insanely powerful equipment, similar to how Katsu plays Breaking Scales, as it's just an always threaten over 1 pump. And then finally, we're playing Snapdragon Scalers. There are a lot of reasons to play different shoes. Some lists might play Breeze Rider boots, some lists might play Quick Dodge Flexors, but this deck wants to use cards like E-Strike, Torrent of Tempo, Soul Beat Strike, things that don't always have go again. So on turns that we need the consistency, we want to get that go again. We can even use it on things like Winds of Eternity if we need to, or like possibly even on like a Seek Vengeance if we are on a tight hand, we can't like swing the Edge of Autumn, right, to start our combos. For the main board, we are on a 54 card main board, which means that we need to bring in 6 cards from our side deck. I generally do this number as I feel this number enables you to bring in cards that you need for most matchups. Starting with the attacks, because that's pretty much the core, we do have a lot of new things that are very, very powerful. Let's start with all the new cards. Enact Vengeance is a 2 for 6, where if Edge of Autumn or another attack with Vengeance in its name is the last thing in the combat chain, it gains on hit, destroy all cards in the hero hit's arsenal. Very powerful alongside your Arcana Scar Wraps, as you can pump it to 7 to get the damage through. They can still play D-Reacts on it, so you do need to be careful. It's not like Command and Conquer, which is in this deck as well. You can also, on a 2-card hand, throw Edge of Autumn into Enact Vengeance for a 2 for 7, plus the threaten to pump it to 8 with the Scar Wraps, which is very, very good. This was the first card shown from the original Ira deck, and already it was very powerful. It does have some upside compared to CNC as well. Of course, it is a ninja attack, so we can't use those Scar Wraps or Ancestral on CNC. We can use them on Enact Vengeance, though. As well as we can pump it with things like Flick Flack, which you'll see a little later in our sideboard. We have Seek Vengeance. This comes in red and blue. This is just a 0 for 4 or 2 at blue. That if Edge of Autumn is the last thing, it gets go again. Just another consistent attack that we can play in the deck. Most of the time we're swinging with our Edge of Autumn every turn, so we can send that for 1 and then send a Seek Vengeance in for 5, which is a very good breakpoint, since that goes over D-Reacts. And then the last new attack in the deck is Vengeance Never Rests. This is a 1 for 3, 3-block blue. This card is very, very powerful. It has the combo of if Edge of Autumn was the last attack, it gains go again, and on hit of hero to banish it and be able to play it again this turn. Very powerful alongside the Scar Wraps, as if we can land the hit through, we can then send the Edge of Autumn again, then send the Vengeance Never Rests again, forcing them to have to block it or let us play it for a 3rd time. Just a very good reusable attack, and it's at blue, so if there's situations where we have to pitch it, we don't mind, as it's still a very powerful attack late game as a 1 for 3 at blue, which is really good with Ira as well, since Edge into it makes it a 1 for 4. The rest of the attacks are pretty standard things you'll see inside of Ira decks. Bittering Thorns as just a very powerful 1 for 4. This one did get a reprint in the decks. This one did have a little higher of a price point since it was only in the, at red, only in the Round the Table product, but now it's in this Ira Armory deck. We, of course, are playing 3 copies of CNC. We do have other CNC replacements in the sideboard, so if you don't own CNCs, because they still are pretty hefty price point, you could easily replace them with any other aggressive ninja attack, and you'll be probably in a pretty similar spot, since we are playing other Disruption already in our sideboard. 3 copies of Enlightened Strike, as it's a very flexible card, very good in Ira. Can come in for 7 off a 2-card hand, can come in with go again if we need to, or can be even be a draw to keep an arsenal, or use our Snapdragon Scalers on it to keep going. We're playing 3 red and 2 blue 100 wins, as these are just really good, cheap, low-to-the-ground attacks. They aren't breakpoints themselves, but are very powerful alongside Winds of Eternity, which we are playing 3 copies of as a really good 3-block blue. We're playing 3 copies of Soulbeat Strike and 3 copies of Torrent of Tempo. These do require on hits to gain their go again, but since we have so many tricks now with Ancestral Empowerment, Legacy of Ikaru, and the Arcana Scar Wraps, there are so many ways we can force these hit through that them needing to hit to gain go again really is not a problem. And then one of my favorite ninja cards, Spinning Wheel Kick, as this card is a 1 for 4 go again that's really powerful comboed with itself, and just lets us, keep going with go again. Really, really fun. I really do like this card. It's one of my favorite ninja cards there is. The last attack in the deck is one of the tech card slots, so you don't need it. We're playing 2 copies of Ripple Away. This is just a help extra disruptive piece. Since we don't need only 0 cost blues, since we're not on Kodachis, we can play some of these cards. Ripple Away helps us against some decks that might make a lot of tokens, so that's why it's here. It's also just a 3-block blue if we need it. We're never usually playing it for an attack, but it's here in case we need it. The rest of the deck is some additional support. We do have one other supportive card that's new in Legacy of Ikaru. This is a 0 cost 3-block that gives any ninja attack +1 and an on hit of if Edge of Autumn was the last attack this combat chain to draw a card. This allows you to pretty much, it's just a second Ancestral Harmony. You do require the on hit to draw, so you can't play it to cantrip like you can Ancestral, but if you're playing it, you probably are hitting, and it's just a blue +1. You can also use this on Edge of Autumn if you really need to get that damage through. The rest of the support is pretty standard to Ira. Ancestral Empowerment is playable on any of your ninja attacks. Really good at getting breakpoints through for your on hits of things like Soulblade Strike Torrent of Tempo or your Mask of Momentum. 3 copies of Dual Threat. This card is a little harder to pull off in this version of Ira, as it requires you to get full value to banish the Edge of Autumn on an Okana Scar Wraps and then get it back the same turn. But other than that, it is still a 3-block, so you can just block with it if those turns don't line up. This card, if you do get it off, though, is 6 value for free, which is very powerful, especially in a deck like this that has very good on hits. We do care about the breakpoints a lot. 3 copies of Warmonger's Diplomacy, as we are a deck that doesn't play any non-attack actions. I guess we are playing Dual Threat, but trying to have that not line up. There are times where Warmongers is very key, as it can be an incredible disruptive piece versus a lot of different matchups in the format. Less so effective now that a lot of the decks that played a lot of non-attack actions are LL or are still even fine matchups for Ira. Normally this card in Ninja would help you a lot against something like Azalea, but Azalea is at, I think, 999 and is about to go. But also, Ira has a pretty good matchup into Azalea anyway, as she's a little more defensive of a ninja, which can be good, can be bad, but it means you can block a little more, and you're not hampered as much by Azalea's heavy disruption. And then the final card in the main deck is 2 copies of Wax Off, as we are playing Wax On in our sideboard for our aggro matchups. This is just an extra way to get a little bit of extra defense in the Zen states. Overall, I think the main board is fairly clean. As I said, I think the Kodachis version of the deck still has legs if you wanted to play that. I think that even might be the better version. But the Edge of Autumn version, I think, is really cool. And obviously, if you bought the Armory deck, this is closer to the cards that you have. You already have most of these cards, barring like E-Strike, Dual Threat, and like CNCs. And then you don't need Ripple Away, you don't need Wax On, you don't need Warmongers. So you can play whatever other blues you want there, or any other attack you want instead of the CNC. So with that, let's go and take a look at the deck's inventory. Starting off in the inventory, let's take a look at a few of our equipment. First, for some arcane prevention, we have Tide Flippers, as they are just the core ninja shoe for AB prevention at this point. But we also have the brand new Robe of Autumn's Fall. We're generally never using the effect to destroy it to gain a resource if we're actually using it for its intended purpose of Arcane Barrier. But since the head and arms are so important to this new ninja strategy, and obviously we can't play Lantern as we have a 2-handed sword, playing an Arcane Barrier chess piece is what we need. And Ninja has played Norrin Robes in the past, so this is a great addition that definitely has some upside to being used over something like the Norrin Robe. And then the last piece of equipment is the Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. This card is a lot better than the new mask, even though it's not repeatable like the new mask, and it doesn't have its effect and be able to block like the new mask. This is a one-time use +1 that is just so powerful. we are playing Tenacity and Whirling Mist Blossom as 2 targets. We can also, in the main board, get something like the Winds of Eternity or even a blue Seek Vengeance if we really need it, but mainly this will come in when we bring in our Mist Blossoms and or our Tenacity. For the rest of the inventory, we do have some defensive options. Flick Flack and Wax On are going to be our main defensive options. Wax On is very powerful versus decks like Assassin or other ninjas that play a lot of 0-cost cards, as it's a 5 block. And then Flick Flack is better on games that we want to be able to block with multiple cards. We can send Flick Flack to block 1 breakpoint and then block with a combo card that gets pumped up to 5 from the Flick Flacks +2 on another card. Very, very powerful. For the extra disruption that we can play, 3 copies of Censor. This card does have a bit of a price point, but if you do own them, it's very powerful. It is also a little more skill testing of a card since you need to know what your opponent might have. But when you name that card off Censor and you actually hit the card that they really needed, it is so, so powerful. The reason it's not in the main board is because it doesn't really have the most synergy with what we want to be doing in the main board, which is ending on an Arsenal Disruption or really big attack. But it's definitely a card that you can consider for the main board, especially over something like CNC if you don't have the CNCs, since it is cheaper. We do have some other 2-for-6 disruption. Our Race Face is very powerful. As we keep going, we're getting more and more traded things. Erase Face, being able to remove that is oh so powerful. And then finally, the weakest link. This card has been a little weaker as of late, as some of the key heroes that played no base block cards, Zen, what's her name, Aurora, and Enigma, all are living legend now. So there are less decks the weakest link is good against. We do have a replacement that I will talk about in a few minutes that you can replace any of the inventory cards for, which you might be realizing is not in the list, or which you might have realized that isn't in the list already, but we'll talk about it. And then finally, 1 copy of Tenacity and 2 copies of Whirling Mist Blossom. These are here just for Pouncing Lynx targets. You want to play Pouncing Lynx versus decks that either A, are decks that are going to just full block you whenever. They literally don't care about hitting you, they just want to block you. A lot of the time that is going to be things like Guardian. You'll want to bring Pouncing Lynx as they can easily defend your Mask of Momentum triggers. But also you want to consider Pouncing Lynx versus decks that you can just blow up. These are decks that generally will never block you. The decks that don't play D-Reacts. The decks that just want to straight race you. Something like Azalea is a good example, because if Azalea ever gives you a turn where you aren't disrupted, you can just go off. It's hard for Azalea to block, as half the deck is 2 blocks. And they generally don't play a lot of D-Reacts. They generally just want to try and race you. Decks that can block you decently well, these mid-range decks or these aggro decks do play a lot of 3 blocks, something like Assassin, you still want the Mask of Momentum, as we have so many pumps in the deck with the Legacy of Ikaru, the Ancestral Empowerment, even our gloves, that we can easily get through damage on turns they don't have the D-React, or if they do, they're wasting it. So Mask of the Pouncing Lynx is going to come in for those 2 polar ends of the literally decks that if they block you, they lose, or decks that need to block you to win. And then Tenacity and Whirling Mist Blossom help with those very nicely. Tenacity gets +1 per defending card, which is really nice. If you land 1 attack at the end of a long chain, you can get the Tenacity and then throw it for a lot of damage. And then Whirling Mist Blossom, if you can get it off with those 2 hits in a row, is pretty much a must block, as it will draw you 2 extra cards to keep going with your turn. The last card that you might want to consider is Razor Reflex. It is not in the deck because there are enough pumps already, and the deck can be a little resource intensive already. You already spend pretty much 3 resource every turn. You have Of course, your weapon costs 1, and you do have a good amount of 2 or 1 cost cards, and things like Bittering Thorn, Vengeance, E-Strike, or not E-Strike, CNC, Enact Vengeance, Torrent, Spinning Wheel, those attacks, as well as even in your inventory, all 3 of your disruptive attacks here do cost resources. But if you didn't own one of these cards, if you didn't own CNCs or you didn't own sensors, I would play Razor Reflex over them, as you're cutting a costed card for another costed card, and this can help you get your damage through. It's very good with things like Torrent of Tempo, Soul Beat Strike that need to hit to get their go again, or something like Vengeance Never Rests, or Bittering Thorns that have very powerful on hits that you want to get through as they give you a large amount of advantage, as well as Edge of Autumn is a sword, so you can play it on the Edge of Autumn to get 3 damage through to help close out a game. But with all of that, that is going to be the end of the video. As I said, next week we are going to be taking a look at Katsu with the new Edge of Autumn cards because he uses them so well. But until then, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.